All right, we are back with our power ranking the legendary lords of Total War Warhammer by their lore power strength. Here we'll be grouping together Beastmen, Norska, and Ogres because the Norska list would be only 2 lords long, Ogres would only be only 3, and Beastmen would only be 4. So it's pretty easy to slap them all together. They all have a similar vibe to them. And starting off at number 9, bottom of the barrel, is Khazrak One-Eye. He is a Beast Lord, and he is, I guess, scary for a Beast Lord, but really underwhelming, honestly, in the lore. He just kind of keeps going back and forth with Boris Todbringer. Their duels are a little underwhelming. He keeps letting Boris get away. Boris lets him get away. So they're both kind of done more damage than good by their own stories. I mean, he's a good Beastman Marauder. He's fine, but there's a lot worse things out there in the world, especially in the Legendary Lord category, that Khazrak would end up getting bodied by most things. Number 8 on our list will be Morghur the Shadowgave, a weird chaos spawn beastman hybrid that keeps respawning whenever he's killed somewhere. He'll always show somewhere back up else in the world and continue to cause havoc and mayhem. He is an okay duelist. He has mostly this aura of madness that turns things into monsters when they get too close to him, unless you have some kind of magical armor or empowerment or a magical weapon. It'll be pretty hard to kill him. But if you do have those things, like if his aura doesn't just kill you, most people kind of body Morghur. I don't know. He's fine, but a lot of legendary lords or legendary characters have the prerequisites needed to get through his aura of madness and then just beat him up. So he's a little scarier than Khazrak. I think Khazrak is a better fighter, but Morghur has more magical imbuements to him, and his Chaos Spawn-like strength would get him through. I could see Khazrak maybe beating him, but I think Morghur wins more of those situations personally. And that Aura of Madness is nice to have. He dies a lot, though, in the lore, because he keeps coming back as part of his story. Is wherever he dies, he's reborn somewhere else, but that doesn't particularly bode well if he keeps getting beaten all the time. Number 7, as we continue with the Beastmen Lords, rocking the bottom of this list, we have Malagor Dark Omen, blessed by the Chaos Gods to lead Beastmen herds against the forces of good in the end times. He doesn't do his job very well, and the Dark Gods get mad at him. He can't lead the Beastmen herds where they need to go. Instead, they just kind of rampage around and ignore him a lot of the time. He is a pretty meh melee combatant as far as legendary lords go. He likes to dive down from the skies and assassinate like artillery crews and stuff, but he always avoids a direct fight with any named character. His Winds of Magic usage is pretty fine, but Arkan the Black finds it pretty easy to fend him off. In fact, Arkan dismisses him so much out of hand that he just ignores him and leaves Krell to fight an entire Beastman army by himself. So Malagor, not the most imposing in the lore. Everybody ignores him. And a minor named character ends up killing him in the end times. Gregor Martok, the Supreme Patriarch at the time, but he was the champion of the Beasts College. He just kills him with a couple Amber Spears. So Malagor did not have a good time. For number 6, we finally get away from the Beastmen and go to Throg the Troll King, the second most powerful Norskin Lord. Throg is a troll of disproportionately large size. His weapon is literally just a rock on a stick. It's not magical in any way. He does have the Wintertooth Crown, which allows him to command any nearby monstrous things. It's how he ends up making an army, but that wouldn't help him in a 1v1 duel of any kind. So he is honestly going into a 1v1 duel naked. Just relying on his ridiculous regeneration, even for a troll, Throg has insanely strong regeneration, and he has been mutated by chaos, as you can see by looking at his beautiful mouth here. He has way too many teeth. But Throg is very smart. He's kind of supposed to be hyper intelligent, like as smart as a college-going Imperial. He shouldn't have the voice lines he does in Total Warhammer. He should be much more like, "Hello there, very nice to see you," instead of "Throg, Troll King." That's not great. But he is at number 6 on this list. He is stronger than like Malagor or Morghur or Khazrak. His raw strength, literally, he is stronger, and his regeneration would help him a lot in a duel. Maybe Malagor could beat him. I could see those two being flip-flopped on this list, but I just think that duel would be Malagor hitting him over and over again until Throg landed one blow on him, and then Malagor gets crushed out of the sky, his bones broken, And Throg could just regenerate almost infinitely against Malagor's attacks. So I think he'd be fine, but maybe I'm wrong about that. In the lore, he pops up behind Sigvald, assassinates him before running off to die. One shot, I think, to Volton. I'm not exactly sure. I know an Imperial hero takes him out almost offhand. So, yeah, Throg doesn't have a great end. He loses to Gotrek and Felix quite badly, getting pushed off of his own tower before he regenerates enough to run away. So, Throg, better than 3 of the Beastmen Lords, but still not a particularly impressive specimen himself. He is fine. All right, the man with the controversial name, I'm going to go with Golgfag Maneater, but if you know his actual name, you can fill it in for yourself. He ends up at number 5 on this list, the weaker of the 3 Ogre Kingdoms Lords. He is fine. He's fine. He's a little bit smarter than Greasus Goldtooth and Scrag, a lot more crafty. He is still a very solid melee combatant, better than a lot of ogres by far. Well armored, very tactical. His loyalties are fickle, so if anything starts to go wrong, he will bail. And with his pistol and multiple other melee options, he can be a versatile fighter, kind of always has what he needs for the job. The main problem with the Maneater is that I don't see him beating anybody above him on this list. I think he handedly beats Throg. There's a big gap between him and Throg, but his craftiness and his general melee stats are not enough to get past any of the top 4. So I think there's a pretty big gap between 1 and 4 and then 6 and 9, but he is right in the middle of just like, not good enough to be in one, not bad enough to be in the other. He's fine. He's a strong ogre mercenary. So at number 4, we have the top Norskin legendary lord, odd of 2, but still he makes it, Wulfrik the Wanderer. Wulfrik the Wanderer has the gift of tongues, where no matter what language he is speaking in, he can taunt somebody to fight him, and it'll usually also distract them. That's the Hunter of Champions passive in the Total War Warhammer games. It's kind of meant to do that, so he lowers your guard by insulting you in such a way that it drives you into a rage. Other than that, he is a very strong combatant, skilled with his sword, a lot more skilled than a lot of Norskin and Beastmen are going to be. You know, someone with actual martial tactics and like parry, riposte, those kinds of things, instead of just sprinting at you and swinging. So Wulfrik's a bit smarter than a lot of other people on this list, especially when fighting. Heavily armored, blessed by the Chaos Gods, and this man hunts down mammoths. He even has a mammoth mount, though. Again, it's not named, so we won't count it in the power level here. But yeah, I do think Wulfrik could take Golgi. Some people might disagree, and that's fine, because Golgi is very, very strong and has a pistol and whatnot. But Wulfrik would bait him into a fight, and that would take a lot of Golgi's advantage away, where it's like, he's an ogre that's smart and knows when to run away. And it's like, well, if you don't run away from Wulfrik, he'll probably just move faster, get a couple cuts in, and just attrition down the Maneater. And he is a very solid duelist. He duels with one of the Nurgle champions. I used to know his name, but I've forgotten it now. In the end times, he duels with them. And then I think he fights Volton for a bit. And if I remember correctly, that he does fight Volton, then it's a pretty even duel for a while until Volton smashes him. But, I mean, holding your own against the incarnate of Sigmar is solid. Especially when you're only making it to number 4 on the list of, honestly, the weaker batch of Legendary Lords. The Beastmen, Norskin, Ogres are not exactly killing it as far as Legendary Lord power level goes. Some people might be surprised that this is not number 2 or 1 on the list, but Greasus Goldtooth is the second most powerful Ogre Kingdoms Lord, in my opinion. Putting him at 3rd on this list. Greasus is one of the largest ogres by weight, so much so that he can barely stand up. His Scepter of the Titans weapon, that big gold thing, it does give him nearly the strength of a Titan when he swings it, so he can crush most things. But as his duel with Grimgor showed, he's really slow, like kind of fast for an ogre, but compared to most other legendary lords in the game, he is pretty slow. And his martial strat is just, I'm going to swing at you and crush you with thing. And if you're fast or a good fighter, or you're, you know, just conscious of the fact that he's going to just try and bop you with his big scepter, you can usually dodge it and get good damage in. So Greasus became the over-tyrant of all through a mix of money, food, successful raiding, and beating and eating his opponents in kind of trickery or treacherous ways. But ogre chieftain duels aren't usually the best fights. They're just kind of two big guys slapping at each other. So Yeah. Greasus is powerful enough to take out the Maneater, for example. Like, I think if he got challenged by Golgi, that wouldn't go well. You know? One hit from the Scepter of the Titans, and a limb is flying off of Maneater. And he's not, like, fast enough to get out of the way of Greasus swinging at him. But I think, like, the next two are a little more powerful in different ways. But honestly, no one in this list is going to be agile enough to dodge away from Greasus Goldtooth. So, that's fair. But, I don't know. I think the other two are a little scarier. Coming in at number 2 on this list, and the most powerful for the Ogre Kingdoms, Scrag the Slaughterer. I saw a couple anecdotes that even Greasus Goldtooth was scared of him, and that, like, Scrag isn't a tyrant. He isn't trying to rule anything. He's just running around eating stuff and feeding his cauldron for the maw. So he's kind of a weird religious zealot, but Greasus is scared of him, just wants to keep Scrag away at all times because he makes him uncomfortable. Scrag is a caster, one of the few on this list, and as you know from my other lists, casters are very, very strong in Warhammer lore, so that would give Scrag a lot of power in a duel with anybody else. He is a terrifying combatant, just rampaging through the fields like a force of nature, slaughtering things, never stopping. Any damage he takes doesn't seem to bother him. As you can see, his super scarred up body, he just kind of bullies through things and continues to chop and slash and eat his way through. And the maw infinitely powers him. The more he murders, kind of like a Cornate a little bit, the more he murders, the more powerful he becomes. And like the stronger his bloodlust in a battle. So he's just kind of this unstoppable juggernaut that I really wouldn't want to be anybody else. I feel like if Greasus tried to fight him, how I'd imagine that fight going would just be like, if the first blow from the Scepter of the Titans doesn't literally kill Scrag, Scrag's going to carve up and like eat Greasus while he's still alive and like heal up all the damage while he's eating him, and Greasus would just like panic and die. It would not be a good time for the Over Tyrant. Now, if that first blow from the Scepter of the Titans kills him, then I guess GG, it's over. But the maw might have something to say about that, plus is just weird supernatural aura might keep him safe from literally getting one shot by the Scepter of the Titans. I could be wrong there. It was pretty close between Scrag and Greasus, but I think Scrag just has a little bit much more going for him with that magic casting and whatnot. While Scrag and Greasus were close for number 2 and 3, and it was a difficult decision, number 1 was not. Taurox the Brass Bull is by far the strongest character on this list. He is eventually killed by Marcus Wolfhard in the end times because Marcus fires an arrow in the one weak spot he has. It's that little fiery molten thing at the base of his neck. It's the only part where his brass armor does not cover, and an arrow can get through there and kill him. Aside from that, Khorne, essentially, you know the story of Achilles, where his mother dipped him in the river Styx to make him immortal, except for his heel. Taurox is that, except Khorne dipped him in a river of brass. And then when Taurox bit his hand, he was like, oh, okay, little bitch, and like carved out a spot at his neck where he could be killed. But otherwise, Taurox is an unstoppable Doom Bull, just running around constantly murdering everything in his path, and his hide is nearly immune to physical damage because it's made out of brass. Like, a lot of things just bounce right off of it. Arrows don't do much as long as he keeps his head down. Swords don't do much against his armor, and he is really tall, so a lot of things can't even reach his weak spot if they wanted to. And that, with his 2 flaming axes, I think he would just devour and murder anybody on this list. I think Greasus would get one shot in on him as Taurox is charging. I don't think it'd be a good shot, because Taurox is probably going to do that headbutt dive he usually does, so Greasus is going to get surprised, and then once those fire axes get into him, Greasus is just toast. Taurox is a force of nature, and he easily tops this list.
Roar. Subscribe, yes.